Educational Computing Organization of Ontario, and BIT is the Ontario Technology Conference. So on Saturday morning at 9:30, getting my second cup of coffee, Doug reaches out. Good morning, Martha. I've been intending to send this message for a while now. I should have sent it earlier, and for that I apologize. He's already apologizing. So Canadian. I just wanted to congratulate FCL for the series of teacher supports you've done recently. I know they're well attended, and take care. I hope you and the fam are well. Isn't that nice? Very sweet. I said thanks. Thanks, Doug. Anyways, so that's my Monday motivation. And as we get our hands washed like Jeff is doing there, getting into it, clean hands, fresh face. We're here to kick off Monday with intro to Teams. So in Ontario, this is the first day that teachers are welcoming back their students in some shape, way, or form to learning experiences to try and extend the learning opportunities for students across Canada or Ontario. A lot of other districts and provinces have already been engaged in remote learning, and we're starting to see some feedback in terms of where the improvements need to happen and the successes that need to be celebrated. So it's awesome to see and witness that. And for our fans or friends who are on the call here, we'd love to hear your perspective as well on how it's going and what we can do to support. But we thought we better kick it off right away with...
What? Oh, sorry.
No problem.
The link to the staff room chat doesn't work. Yikes.
The link to the staff.
We can work through that. I'll try to help.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Awesome. So we wanted to kick Monday morning off with an intro and overview of what the heck Teams is, because we really see Teams as an awesome vehicle to support the remote learning experiences, and as a partner of Microsoft's and a proud partner in the work that they're doing, and also as an organization that relies a lot on Teams. We are kicking off this experience to talk about what Teams is, give you an overview, and then also be able to use this as something we can post on our website and share out or point to when people are like, oh, my district told me that I'm using Teams, what is this? So we can get started with the best possible experience for you with this tool. So we've asked Corinne to take us through Teams. Corinne Hoisington, one of our favorite American friends who have been on this journey with us since March. And we're thrilled that you're here to offer this support, Corinne. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and we're going to get our Teams on.
Absolutely. Well, good morning, everyone, or whenever you're listening to this. We welcome you, and let me just go ahead and share. Always interesting to be using the same platform that you are presenting about. So always a little bit of a challenge there. Let's get rolling. Hey, welcome everyone. How can we be teaching remotely without feeling remote? And that's what it's all about at this moment. I'm Corinne Hoisington. I am a professor in a high school career technical educator in Virginia. And I also am honored to be a part of the Fair Chance Learning team. Are you waking up? I hope I'm catching you at a good time. I've been grinding so long, been trying this shit for years. And I got nothing to show, just climbing this rope right here. And if there's a man upstairs, he kept bringing me rain. But I've been sending up prayers and something's changed. I finally found my hallelujah. I've been waiting for this moment. So, hey guys, let's get our hallelujah on. I'm an author of a lot of textbooks, mother of 6 children and 6 grandchildren. And I got to share with you real quickly, the kids have been staying with us quite a bit because my daughter and her husband are both charge nurses at our hospital in Virginia, and they're very, very busy, and I'm very, very thankful for the work that they're doing right now. But this weekend I had all the wee ones for the grandsons,
And it was, they hadn't had a haircut. So of all things, way back in high school, I was a hairdresser. And so I cut 3 out of the 4. Now the 4th one, we cannot, you know, mess with perfection there, right, guys? So there is the latest haircuts. Go ahead.
I was just saying adorable, Corinne. Adorable.
So there we go. By the way, he has a lizard in hand right here. You know, it's all about the lizards. Hey, so let's hop in. I heard last week in one of our staff chats quote, and it really kind of struck me. It was by Gary Steger, and he said, are you still seeing this? I'm getting a little error message popping up. Yes, you're still seeing, good.
Yeah.
So there is a reason to celebrate briefly, but then you must act. Use this time to remake schooling in a way that's more humane, creative, meaningful, and learning-centered. This is our moment. So with that in mind, let me teach you one of the great tools that are available for remote learning, but even everyday learning, Microsoft Teams. And to give you a little background here, let me share an image. I love storytelling, and this was a picture taken on my campus at my school last week. We find in a rural community like mine that a lot of the students do not have access to good enough internet connectivity to go with remote learning. So what we did at our own campus was they took some of the routers in the very, very far back rooms of our school and put them as close as possible to the parking lot. And we've let all the students know that if they want to pull up and hop on the internet to do some work, that they can get the high speed that way. And we even are doing some, we've asked for donations for the community of old computers that are not being used to get that computers into the hands of students who can't afford. And this picture was taken on our campus. I thought it was just great. Noticing they had their social distancing, but they weren't only hopping on the internet, I think they missed each other. And it was their moment to kind of connect, because really what we're talking about with remote learning is also a connection, a social connection. So I just love that. So what's happening with Teams? I want you to pretend you've never heard of Microsoft Teams, and maybe for a lot of this, we don't have to pretend a lot. First of all, it's used in business a lot, and I kind of like that connection, and here's why. Why not use a tool and teach my students in the online classroom a tool that they can use maybe later on in real business? And I like that. 93 out of the Fortune 100 companies are using Teams. We now know that millions of organizations worldwide, 181 countries out of the 194 are using it. And it also works within 53 different languages. So to me, this is a great worldwide tool. And I think it's great to manage remote learning. Why? Well, first of all, it can work on a computer desktop, a PC, a Mac. It can go over the web. You could use a Chromebook. You could use your smart mobile phone, your iOS, Android, any laptop device. So I love that it's kind of, you know, technology agnostic, and it doesn't need some of the high amped connection powers. It actually allows you to kind of dial back if that's necessary. So some news that I've seen this week about all of this. Do you know that in New York City, the schools have banned, for example, Zoom because of security concerns, and shifted our largest school district in the States to Microsoft Teams this week. So we're seeing a lot of move to Teams for a lot of different reasons. So kind of exciting. So it can be used on all of these different systems. And so however you want to connect, this might be an answer. In fact, for the 2 people on the planet, I kid, who are using Linux, they now actually, Teams came out with a Linux version this last week. So it includes everyone, and I love a tool that includes everyone. So I kind of want to look at how can we use Microsoft Teams? What do we need to know before we get ready for our class and lecture? What should we know during it and maybe even after it? So how we can collaborate and have some of these course discussions. And I'm not just talking about Teams, I'm using Teams. In Virginia, where I teach, I've been meeting with the students in the evenings. It seems to be the reason we picked evenings, oddly enough, was because a lot of times their parents were using the computers during the day. And we record it, so if students can't come live, they can come remotely. And there's a little quiz, whether you come in person or after the fact. We have a little quiz that counts as a grade to make sure they were watching it or listening it, because we want to make sure everyone can be responsive here. So how do we get our school set up? How can we dip our toe in? And here's what's neat about this. Even if your school system is not looking at Teams, you can use Microsoft Teams as an individual, and you don't have to be part of your school staff to be able to use this because it is free. And did you all catch that? Free. So how can we create collaborative classrooms, connect with our colleagues who are in education, and also communicate with school staff here? So let's start at the beginning. Office.com. I want you to write that down, tattoo it on some body part, anywhere. And here is how you get connected, whether you're part of the school or you're doing this as an individual. Office.com will let you get connected to Teams and allow your students to connect to Teams. And yes, it's free. So if you go to this website, office.com, you can say, I'm a student, I'm a teacher, and it just takes you through a series of steps to get you where you need to be to get started with Teams. And if your system or you're even individually already using Office 365, and let me use the new correct name, last week, Microsoft changed the name of Office 365 to Microsoft 365. So now this huge expanse of tools is all just branded Microsoft 365. If you already have that, just log into your typical email. You click the waffle up here. That's those 9 little dots. Boy, breakfast, waffles, don't leave me now, people. What you could do is click on that waffle and click Teams, and that would also connect you to Teams. So either way, you could use office.com to connect or log into your Microsoft email and then click Teams by clicking on the waffle. So when you open Teams, one of the first things you're going to be doing is creating a class team. And just so we understand the wording behind this, when you create this class team, this first one is a class where you could do discussions and assignments. You could have projects, you could have OneNote, you could have all these pieces and parts. So that would be your team type. You could also instead create a PLC, which is a professional learning community. This really works great to connect educator to educator. And kind of that's what we're connecting to right now. You could have one for staff. This could be for professional development and beyond. And I love other. I just always like when there's on any survey a word called other, because let's face it, we don't want to go with the masses. Other just simply means if students or teachers want to create Microsoft Teams kind of hangout area to connect for their clubs, their study groups, after school activities. We're even seeing the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, whatever, kind of connecting through this. So those are some of the pieces that you're going to see.
And Corinne,
so when you,
yes, as I'm learning so much from the professors and engineers that I've been connecting with since March, what I learned about the class Teams is that it's not searchable for other students. So it's enhanced security for the students in the class.
Yes, so Microsoft Teams is so secure, so you don't have to worry about someone entering your class without being formally invited. There's some terms out there like called Zoom bombing and all these kind of concerns. How that's happening is people just kind of keep typing until they find a code to get in with, and this is different. You have to kind of be invited into this environment. So you're absolutely right. They can't find this or stumble upon it or try to bother your class, which we have to have safe, my goodness. So let me just kind of show you the basic layout, because a lot of times, even if you've been in Teams a lot, you may have kind of muddled around and like, oh, this is where everything is. So on the left side of Teams, and you're in Teams right now, so this should be helping you. This is kind of your navigation area where all of your tools are listed over here on the left side. You see that purple bar? So kind of think it as your very first column where everything is really located today. So this will give you, if you have things like activity or what the most recent activity, or someone asks you something, or a teacher is responding back to you, where you can chat with your class. What teams do you have? Typically, once we start creating our teams, a lot of times we'll do them by subject area or different classes that the student would be taking. So physical science, health, research, maybe a separate one for your school staff that the students would not see. And one of my favorites, look right down here where my mouse is circling. Do you see those 3 dots? This is called the personal apps area. So I want you to think of this as actually when there's 3 dots in a row. I love terminology. It's called an ellipsis. But if you click on these 3 dots, and I always think of it as dot, dot, dot. So dot, dot, dot is right here. And this will share with you all the kind of cool extra tools. We'll talk about those in a minute. And then we have a search bar up here, and this search bar is invaluable. So if a student is trying to find out where my math quiz for grade 3 is, we could search for a couple common terms in here and find those quick actions and launch those apps. You can manage your profile up here. You can pick your picture. I encourage my students, we want to see what they look like. And sometimes they even use an avatar up there if they want more privacy. That's cool. And this is the button where you can create your team or join with a team. So now we have all of these buttons put together as we move along. And I always, once I get into the class itself, and in other of these Teams events, we will be doing more individual items. I'm just trying to give you this top-down look approach. I always create something called a fun channel. And inside your team for your class, let's say we have a team for math, and we have all of the traditional, math lessons, assignments, all the pieces and parts, their notes. I always create a fun channel in there. You see, what's a fun channel? It could be where I have some fun math, kind of riddles. It could be a virtual science fair. It could be a poetry reading. It could be, what are you cooking? Love food, so foodie. A camera shot of your day, whatever that looks like. A reading list. So let's make sure that this isn't just about the straightforward, let's get down to the classroom objectives. Let's think of the whole person in themselves. So once you set up your teams, your class, and then you set up individual channels. You say, what's a channel? A channel could be like a week worth of work. So it could be, here we're covering chapter 5. And we can then invite students once we kind of get it set up a little bit. And we're going to dig into this in future weeks, but we want to kind of show you what that virtual learning space kind of looks like. You can also set up class meetings. When do you want to meet? Not face-to-face, but virtual face-to-virtual face. And what I mean by that is you could just click a Meet Now button. For example, let's say one of my grade 9 students writes me and says, hey, I'm having trouble doing my assignment. I could say, hey, I'm going to click Meet Now right now, and here's the link. So we could have virtual tutoring right now, but a lot of times you may want to set up a certain class meeting at a certain time. So you can click New Meeting right here. It allows you to kind of set up a calendar time. I want to meet on Tuesday at 2 p.m., establish what the time zone is. Some of us live on edges of time zones, so that can help. and how they can click that link. They have to have the link to kind of join or the number to join, so no one can just pop into these meetings. And as soon as you get your students in there, here's the first thing I discussed with my students. I think we have to have a little netiquette. And you know the term, it's kind of like the rules just to make sure we're in a safe place. And in this classroom, I always remind students, whether we're face-to-face or we're online, and there's something about being online where people kind of don't feel that, they're not face-to-face and they would say and do things that maybe they typically wouldn't do. And I call it the mean girls and mean boys. I mean, that happens. So we respect each other. We try our best. We're a team. We learn from our mistakes. We create. We celebrate each other's success. And you know what? Every single time I meet with my class, I go over these 6 tenets. Why? I think we just need to remember and uplift each other. So this isn't just about a tool. This is about the big picture.
And Corinne, I just posted in the chat there, Christine McKee from Edmonton Catholic, she's created a guide for parents and students that would extend on some of the netiquette you're talking about there. What I love about your approach, though, is it's not a punitive thou shall not. It's more about empowering and positive statements and affirmations for the students so they really develop a sense of self in their online environment and, are willing to grow in terms of their expectations and how they, engage in that environment. That's amazing. And then it reminds me of Antonio Venderman when he's out in Vancouver with the Surrey district, and he is taking over a new build of a principalship of a new build. And prior to COVID, he was looking at creating norms, and he didn't want it to be rules. He didn't want it to be policies and procedures. He wanted it to be more inclusive, about a community of learning. So it's nice to see that, especially when we were talking to Brenda Sherry last week, and she was saying, I don't want to remove student agency. I don't want it to become more restrictive, more like I said, you must do this, but really encouraging the student agency. So awesome. Thank you for that list.
And the worst thing you could possibly do to start your first remote meeting with all these knots. I mean, what tone does that set? So I love that. So what does a student experience look like? So let me kind of show you. I want you to imagine a student logs in, and this is what they would see, all of their courses. And I know a lot of schools are looking at, 10 hours a week or whatever you're setting. And first of all, understand there's a chat line that they can ask the teacher, ask each other, come up with ideas. And you can do private chats where the teacher works with a student one-on-one. A lot of times I don't want to ask in a public forum what my concerns are. And there's something called emoticons down here. I find that sometimes in chat, unless you put like a happy face or something, they read it wrong. Instead of me trying to say, let me help you, they see, let me help you. So add a couple of these social emoticons as you go along. And you may want to show a video like this to your students as you first invite them so they kind of know what this room looks like. There's a lot of apprehension to doing something that they're not comfortable with. They've already got enough changes in their world. So maybe by sharing, okay, here's what it's going to look like, here's what you can do, would be a good first start here. So what can teams do? We've kind of got you set up how you can get started with teams. But honestly, beside talking like chatting and face-to-face, what does this look like? So when you're in Teams, and again, it's free, of course, you can speak and share video. You can participate in a chat. You can privately view, let's say, a PowerPoint, any kind of files. You can share content. You can mute others so that you're not getting all that outside sounds and noise. You can remove participants. This is a weird thing to say, but I teach a lot of secondary education. I actually had to ask a student privately to wear his shirt during the meeting. And he says, well, what happens if I don't do that? I said, honestly, I'm going to have to remove you. I don't want to be, negative, but just let's be respectful. So that can happen. You can admit people from the lobby to make sure you have everyone coming in that you expect to come in. And you can even record it for later on. You also have the capability of putting your notes or the students' notes collectively in OneNote in Teams. So maybe I have something that's really quite detailed and I don't want to just show it in my PowerPoint as, let's say, I'm teaching. I want it in their OneNote so they can look back at this because there's a lot of information in that. So we also have a whiteboard, and whiteboard is so cool just to sometimes let students kind of draw what they're feeling or draw what we're talking about. There's a trend in education today that cartoonist, if you would, draw what we're saying and thinking. So I've left the whiteboard open quite often, and I have got some amazing artists out there that kind of draw what I'm saying to help the other students, put together and understand, because a visual is worth 1,000 words.
And Corinne, will you just go back to the heart slide?
Yeah.
Because I think what is another feature that educators might not realize, and what's amazing is that if you're in a Teams call, I can request control, and you can allow me control, and then I can be on the screen with you. And so from a perspective of, having the student work with you in terms of the content that's being presented is one thing, but also having somebody click through your screen, like an instant screen share, it has been invaluable for me as my friends at Microsoft have taken over my computer a couple of times and said, here, Martha, this is what you need to do in terms of like setting up my provisions or whatever. And so that's just built right in. And so now I can control Corinne's computer, and I could take her through the slide deck, or I can be pushed demonstrating my knowledge and showing where I think the aorta is, or parts of the heart. So it can be an interactive like teaching tool, or it can be a thank you universe for figuring out my problem.
I love that. And if you look at the top right now of our recorded screen, you can see where I could give Martha control and she could have that shared response with me as well. And a lot of you have noticed, and let me go out of my slide deck just for a moment to be able to do this. So in Teams, I'm going to stop presenting just for a moment. If you click on the 3 dots, I'm going to turn off and blur my background and go back into sharing again. You say, why does that matter so much? Well, let me tell you a story of a student who really needed this week. So they came on the screen and they came extra early for our time at night. And I noticed, I said, hey, welcome, you're early. And the student, it was a young lady, she said, hey, I want you to know I'm a mom. She was actually a college student taking the same class. And I don't want anyone to see my apartment in the background. First of all, I have a husband right now that is not being assistive, or a man in her life. He shows up and sometimes starts screaming at me. I don't know when he's going to show up. Is there any way I could blur my background? So sometimes we don't realize the reasoning, and it could just be I didn't clean my background. So let me kind of show you what I mean by that.
Being both technical and creative.
So I just wanted to check in with you guys and talk about what
democracies respond to those scandals.
Remember that?
My apologies.
So if you want to try to blur your background right now, feel free. And remember, we mentioned earlier that there are a lot of additional apps that work inside of Teams, actually over 300. So you could add things, let's say, that you might be doing in class, like Flipgrid. In a couple weeks, I hope to share Flipgrid with you guys. I'm a big fan. There's a lot of tools I could use within here and just simply add them to become super, powerful as I go. And one of my favorite tools that we can add in is called
Before you get into your favorite, your and Dustin's favorite tool, the immersive reader. We know how he likes to demo those tools. The Flipgrid piece, I think, will be a really powerful solution for districts who are not ready to do the video conferencing, live video conferencing, but allowing student voice prior to, reviewing. You'll talk about all of the security measures that can be in place for that. But the fact is that the students can be communicating in a video format in a safe way if they're not going live.
I love that. And by the way, hi, Maeve. I love it. She's adorable. Oh, breaks my heart just jumps out of my chest. So if you haven't heard about Immersive Reader, please know that 1 in 5 students in the world today is considered to have some special need, and very often they're going to need some assistance. And don't forget, now that they're online and expected to read a lot more, I think the Immersive Reader could be really assistive. Let me kind of show you what this looks like in a class. So now when I post something in my class, they can click in the top right and see this Immersive Reader. What an Immersive Reader does is it breaks the word into syllables. You can even put special coloring on nouns and verbs and adjectives and adverbs. And it just makes it easier for students to sound out the words. Very often, if you're dyslexic, notice if you point over some words, it actually shows you the physical picture. This will really help students who English or whatever language or French is not your first language. It could be really assistive. What else can it do? There is a free add-on tool called Polly that I've been using for a while that allows you to kind of put polls into Microsoft Teams. Why would I want to do that? A lot of times I kind of want to pre-assess what my students already know. So I might ask a couple questions or just even survey how many are introverts, extroverts, enjoying being stuck in their house, who's not. So we could put all kinds of polls using Polly in Teams. And I hate to bring up assessment because to me, that's not where most of us are at right now. We're trying to really lift each other up and help students with the learning process. But ultimately, we want students to also be able to assess what they're doing. And Microsoft Forms is a tool that you can put in multiple choice questions. And check this out. It even has a math tool. What's neat about this Microsoft Forms that does assessment and auto grades, yay. It works on mobile too, so it lays out perfectly on the student's smartphone if that's the only option in which they can connect to the class. So what are some best practices real quick? If you're in a situation where you're having trouble with bandwidth, you're trying to present, ask the students to turn off their video, and that really does help with low bandwidth so that they're able to connect much better. If you share a visual during a live class session, share just the document rather than your entire desktop. Now, right now, I am sharing my entire desktop. But if I were in an area as a teacher that I had very, very poor connectivity, I could just share, let's say, the Word document, or just share that web browser so that they can see that. When you share your desktop, it does take more bandwidth. And rather than presenting your content to students live, record a lesson in Teams as a video. It actually stores it in a free tool that works with Microsoft called Microsoft Stream. Think of it as a way that automatically closed captions your video, but it's also searchable video. So if the teacher says the word photosynthesis about a half hour in, I could actually search the video for the spoken word photosynthesis. That's crazy. So as we start to open it back in for everyone to have some comments, I think every student's voice should be heard. And it shouldn't just be remote work that we push out like worksheets. I think we all know that we learn better in a community. We lift each other up. Competition, all those things are great. So let me kind of show where Microsoft is heading as they're adding more and more features. This was posted just a couple weeks ago. Microsoft announces some new team features. Just even a few weeks ago, the usage had skyrocketed nearly 40% in 1 week. This is just crazy. Don't forget, Teams has only been out for 3 years, but we know that it's the most downloaded business tool today and quickly becoming one of the most downloadable educational tools right now. What are some of the new features that they're adding in the next few weeks and few months? I always like to see what's coming next. They're going to have pop-out windows, and anyone who uses Teams a lot knows sometimes you want to have 2 or 3 conversations open at one time. So the pop-out windows will be awesome. Coming soon is raising your hand, but let me show you a workaround right now. What I have a student do while I'm presenting is to moderate the chat while we're all talking. And someone can I always tell them just to put the letters RH in the chat, kind of like RH means raise their hand, and that person breaks in and says, hey, professor, hey, so-and-so has a question. So that could be a workaround, but we're seeing that tool come out soon. There's also going to be a new tool to minimize the background sound. A lot of times we all go on mute, but let me share. The other day, right next to me, literally right out this, I'm pointing 12 feet from where I'm sitting right now, they're building a new house. So the other day I am supposed to, talk with my class, but the background noise of them hammering and doing all the sawing out there was ridiculous. This will help even as a speaker to minimize that background sound, and it could even be the kids. So I'm excited. They're going to do more face squares. You say, what's face square? Typically, face squares in Teams, you have 4 people that you can see who might be actively sharing or moving or talking. We're soon going to see it spread out to 12 or 16 squares. So that way we can see a little bit more, which makes it feel like a community. And before I end, I love a story. So talk about social distancing at the best. I have tried to stay home as much as possible, but the other day I go to the grocery store. And it turns out that the women's ladies' room is closed. So I have no options. I walk into the male room and talk about social distancing. We talk about remote learning, but I think in the big picture, this will be a permanent tool that we can use to connect and collaborate. We don't have to have things distanced. So guys, here's my email address. Here's my handle on Twitter. Follow me. Hey, let's open it up to some discussion. And I know this was very high level kind of over approach, and we'll dig in deeper, but if you don't know what Teams is, it's hard to even start on that journey. So let me unshare my desktop here. I'll let you guys start popping in questions or thought process. Let's see.
So, Corinne.
Yeah.
The RH thing is brilliant. Simple things, right? So when we're talking about norms, creating norms, having a student monitor the chat or somebody monitor the chat for you is essential, for sure. And then the RH thing makes perfect sense. And I really liked how you talked about how to minimize the demands on the connection. So the sharing of the desktop versus the dock, that's going to be really helpful for a lot of our rural and remote communities. And I'm actually going to share that tomorrow we're working with the team in Kenya, and their students and their educators are, well, primarily their educators are relying on mobile devices. So, cellular. So knowing that you can do that is a great strategy for sharing screens. And then the ability to search Microsoft Stream for a particular part in the video is incredible too. So those are my takeaways. Thank you for that. I don't know if the group, if there's other takeaways, and I know Jose is on with us, and she's a director at a French school in Oakville, and an incredible leader. We've worked with Jose for a number of years when, with respect to her work around student engagement and really supporting transitions. And so as students are coming from feeder schools in the K-8 space, how to build a stronger community for them in the high school experience, and also develop the leadership skills of our high school students. So Jose, are you able to come off mute and talk about what remote learning looks like in your new reality?
So good morning, and thank you for having me with you today. If you'll notice, quite a few of my staff have joined. Yeah. So bienvenue. So what I found, today's day one of our remote classes. So what I found up until the lead up was really, and it really struck me when you said, Corinne, that we learn better in a community. And one of the first things I did was set up a teams, but a separate teams than our staff teams, just so it would be a little bit more informal, and so that we could share kind of our realities, what's going on, do daily check-ins, et cetera, et cetera. But what I found was this incredible team just started learning, and they asked questions, and when they didn't know the answers, they would figure it out, and then they would share it, and then they would then help each other set up their classes, help each other set up the features, and finding all new things. And it was just absolutely incredible to watch, to sit back and watch this team just come together and help each other out. And to me, that is such a relief. And also just, it's so empowering and makes me so proud that they're leading the way, that they're really doing amazing things, so that the stress levels and the anxiety levels of other staff members are being actually diminished because everyone's helping each other out. And to me, that is learning in a community. And I'm so impressed just watching what they're doing and seeing how today is going to unfold. And I couldn't be prouder of my team.
Amazing. And how do you feel you're going to keep the community going now until the end of June, and especially with your students, right? The community and culture that you create in a physical space, how do you keep that going, that magic?
Well, that's going to be the challenging part, but I think that once classes are set up and running, I'm going to be hopefully checking into their classes and being able to say a quick hello. I'm working up the courage to make a video to send out to the students. I don't like seeing myself, but I'm working on it, and I will hopefully get it done, and I'm sure my great team will help me out. But I think what's important is just those check-ins. Could be 10 minutes, 5 minutes, just, they're informal, they're not mandatory, but I just keep sending them out. If anybody wants to pop in and talk and ask questions and see how everybody's feeling. And I think one staff member had put it very well in a message saying, I just need that. I need to see my colleagues. I need to see and hear them and know that we're all in this together. It's one thing to see it on a screen or to send emails and whatnot, but when we're actually having a live conversation, it just helps so much more.
Awesome. And how are your boys doing? You have one boy in university, your son. They're not boys, they're getting older. So a son in university and a son in high school.
Yeah, so the one in university is the younger one, Alex. He's in a mode of figuring this out, and he's got his lecture set up on the big screen TV downstairs, and he's doing what he needs to get done. And I don't think he's too happy to be back at home, but mom's house, mom's rules. But what the challenging part is we also have a son who's going to be 20 on April 19th who has autism. And really my heart does go out to all of the families who are struggling with students with special needs, because this is such a challenging time to try to balance everything. And actually my husband teaches a self-contained classroom, so he's working frantically. I don't think I've ever seen him work so hard and get so techie as he has in the last 3 or 4 days to try to figure out how he's going to keep his students motivated and what kind of activities that he can do for them, full well knowing that parents need respite, but a lot of these students just can't work on their own. And that's a really tough part, is a lot of parents right now are going to be struggling because they have no respite. And I'm amazed and so proud of what he's accomplishing and what he's doing, and even watching what my son's teachers are doing, that they're checking in and they're making sure we're okay and sending activities. I mean, my son is extremely competitive, so I think his teacher hit the nail right on the head, because the first thing he did was send out a checklist with a point system. And so we developed it to make it a little bit more intensive. So for every activity that he does, he gets a point. And my son is so competitive that he just wants to get his points. And then to motivate him even more, we said, if you get every 100 points you get $5. He'll do anything for just that monetary piece. And so what was incredible was the other night he was at 99 points, and he just looked at my husband. He said, wait a minute. And he went and grabbed the vacuum and vacuumed the kitchen to get the one last point.
Amazing.
So he could get his 100 points. But again, like, it works for our son, but it may not work for other kids. So it's really important that and I think that's going to be the struggle, is how are we going to meet the needs of all of our students with special needs, because some of them just need that extra help. And again, I know my team is absolutely incredible, and we're going to come up with the tools, and we're going to come up with the ideas, and we're going to come up with a system that works. But it's really tough. It's really tough, I think, to try to find that balance, because this system may not work for everyone. And how are we going to make that work? And that's the question we're asking ourselves right now, is how is this going to pan out for everyone?
Mm-hmm. Awesome insights. And you're right that we don't know what the answer is, and we just have to keep moving forward and supporting one another. And you'll do an incredible job with your video. You could just send it out now. If you need an audience, we can be your audience for you when you're ready to send the message out, because like you said, it means so much to hear and see from the principal's office in a positive way. So great job. Let us know how we can support you. Thank you for sharing your perspective, and keep us in the loop, because it would be really interesting to hear your husband's feedback as well. Not only is he an incredible teacher, but he's an incredible chef as well. So
he is.
To know what he's discovering on this journey to keep you well fed.
Yeah. I can't complain there. I really can't. Between the baking and the butter tarts and the cookies and the gourmet meals, I don't know.
Life is good. We're moving in.
Yep. Sounds good.
Thanks, Jose. Anybody else have any comments or want to contribute anyway about the teams or the struggles that we're seeing? Please feel free.
Martha, we do have a question here, and maybe Corinne, you can answer this.
Sure.
Wondering if Karen's wondering if students are fooling around in the chat writing unhelpful things. Is there a way to block them?
You can have them leave. Block, do you mean block by not letting them in the chat window?
I think that's the question, Corinne.
I am not aware of that particular feature yet.
We could maybe try it. If Martha, you want to remove me from the meeting, we'll see if I can continue to participate in the chat.
Oh, well, that'd be rude. I don't want to remove you.
I promise it will be a teachable moment for me, and I won't create a disruption moving forward.
You are. Cut off. Okay, remove participant.
Okay.
Bye.
I'll see you later.
Oh,
A little empowering.
What we would need in that circumstance is Ben Kelly's kitty box to stick those students in the chat window.
That's where I'm sending her. I'm sending her to the kitty box. That's right.
Kitty box.
We'll see if she can respond. Any other questions?
Yeah, Karen is responding. So now that I'm removed, yeah, we're able to see the chat. Yes, yes.
Oh, good little feature there to know.
You know, one thing, if you're teaching in the primary, secondary, like any other tool, I always, every once in a while, your principal or your administrator can still always connect, and you have really good information to show them if they're not following the rules. So hopefully that's the definite minority, not the majority.
Definitely.